I'm Dennis Jensen. This is my son Cody. We have a cow-calf operation about a half-mile south of Mendon. It's on the side hill, so we have gravity flow irrigation on the majority of it. We have 77 pairs down in the pasture on the lowlands here, and then we have our facilities up here that we're turning into a pasture so we can irrigate it and use it for late season grazing to try to minimize the feeding the harvested grass.
Our operation before we started changing our management and working with NRCS is we were a very intensive operation, but it was the intensive that you don't want to be. We were feeding a lot of hay. We were feeding hay 6 months out of the year, and that takes a lot of work on a family and on an individual. It takes a lot of machinery, and all that work, it really ruins the opportunity for a profit. So we wanted to work to a business model where we weren't feeding so much hay. And so now that we've been able to go and change how we're doing things, we're grazing longer throughout the year, we're putting up less hay, and make more time for the things that we love. We love working with our cattle, we love seeing life, and that's where we're headed now. So when we were working with NRCS and for our CSP enhancement program, we worked with our field officer to make sure that the practices and the enhancements that we were choosing were going to ultimately meet our goals. And with his approach of working with other operations, his schooling, and even our experience, we were able to get a big picture view. Not just the business bottom line, where's the dollar, but really how can we enhance and protect and conserve what we have. So we did wildlife-friendly fencing. It may seem silly to some, but if we can do things to promote wildlife on our place, it's going to ultimately benefit us, and it's going to benefit our community as well. We do stuff with our irrigation water, making measurements and making sure that we're applying it properly so we're not overwatering. We've done things with our herbaceous growth, with our weeds, to reduce the amount of herbicides that we're using. And so working with the CSP program, we have a good story to tell of what we're doing to the land and what we're doing for our operation. And we can show people that we are benefiting them by having us around, tending and caring for the land and the wildlife. And this is a pasture that we had enrolled in the EQIP program before signing up for the CSP program. And mainly with the EQIP program, we did some fencing and we did some water facilities that you see here behind me. And then we also signed up for the prescribed grazing, which basically enabled us to experiment with rotational grazing and gave us some more financial incentive to do it. It also helped us realize some of the legalities behind it. You know, when we're doing a water project, there was some legal stuff that we didn't even know. And so working with an NRCS personnel, we were able to spot those legal troubles and get it taken care of before it actually ever became an issue. And so having that expertise really helped us to avoid any further headaches down the road. So before we enrolled in the EQIP program and really started changing our management, this pasture you're seeing, the cows would be dumped in it May 1st, and then they would be here until October, November, whenever the grass ran out. And what was happening is the animals, because this is drier, they would overutilize this area and grub it down into the dirt. There would be no residual left on this grass. And the sloughs down behind us, they would just be totally overgrown and the cows wouldn't utilize them. And so now that we actually forced the cattle to use those areas that were underutilized before and that were given this the rest that it needs, we're able to grow more grass and utilize more of our forage because of what we've been able to do with the EQIP program and our management. One thing that when we were designing this project is we designed it with long grazing corridors. And the idea is with temporary electric fence, we can subdivide these grazing corridors to match what our animals needed at that certain time. There's times where our cows are calving and we like to make the paddocks a little bit bigger. And then there's times where we'll be really tight. We'll tighten those cows up and increase our stock density, and then we can lengthen out our recovery days because we've made our paddock smaller, so that way there we can utilize the pasture a little bit better, get some more trampling, evenly spread manure and urine throughout the pasture. And so having some flexibility built into the project really helped us. So the idea is before, the cattle would have to either go to the slough or to our artesian well or drink out of the irrigation ditch. And those groundwater sources, they were working, but you have some times with availability. But now we can pump water to this trough. It's going to be centrally located, and off of this one water source, it's going to be able to service, 4 different paddocks. The possibilities are really unlimited, what you can accomplish once you start improving your management and start giving the forage rest and recovery. There's that much forage, and we haven't taken this down too far. There's going to be plenty of leaf here, and look how much I have to work before I get down to the soil. It's hard. There's a good amount of thatch here. And so this is really nice because think about what this is doing for our soil. It's always covered. If there's a raindrop that falls here, it's going to get intercepted by plant matter before it hits the soil. So that's going to help with water infiltration. It's going to help with soil compaction. But then all of this, this will die down and that will build the thatch. Well, that's going to feed your soil biology and going to increase your organic matter. Organic matter, the more percent organic matter you have in your soil, the more capability to be able to hold and retain water. And here in the Intermountain West, that's a big deal.
This is 50 acres that used to have alfalfa for so many years and then grain for so many years. We have had it in the cover crops the last 2 or 3 years. And this spring, we planted 40% fescue, 40% meadow brome, and 20% alfalfa through here to turn this into a pasture.
But we were really trying to see what kind of stockpiling we could get with this type of scenario. And so we've been able to graze this field here with that much snow on top of it and get cows to go down through the snow chasing this fescue. And so this is where we've been able to go late in December after we've done our cover crops and stuff, because it's already established. We can go on here and it works really well for a stockpile. But this was our model, and now all of our old hay ground, we follow the same thing. We're mixing grass in with our alfalfa plantings, and then we can go with our management and decide, do we want to graze it? Do we want to hay it? It just gives us a lot of flexibility with what we can do. But that late winter stockpiling, it really cuts down on how much hay we have to feed. Also, just look at a second here to look at the diversity. We have the legume, it's fixing nitrogen. The grass is going to be compatible with that and feed it. But if a raindrop hits, it's going to be absorbed by the plant, because the places where the alfalfa isn't, the grass is filled in. Clover's moving into here because of just the diversity that we're trying to promote. It's going to be a lot of moisture to hit this before we start having erosion.
When you do a confined grazing, they take everything. They just don't pick out certain things. So they'll come in like a mower and just take everything right down. And then in between that is when we'll do our irrigation.
Yeah. And one thing that's left to do here is we're going to put fence in, and we'll put temporary water facilities, hydrants, so we can move the trough around if we need to, so we're getting that manure in different places of the field. But it's the same thing that we were talking about with our other pastures. We're going to establish grazing corridors that we can, with just a small bundle of temporary electric fence posts and polywire, we can subdivide this and make it so 10-15 minutes in December we got the cows fed and we didn't have to start up a tractor. I think our success would be measured by, our labor on the operation being decreased, so that we have more time for family, more time to recreate. I'd like to see our profitability be increased because we're cutting our costs, but ultimately I'd like to see us be good conservationists, to be able to see wildlife on the place, to see water being absorbed into the soil, less runoff. I'd like to see biodiversity, pastures that are just nutrient rich, and just cattle that are performing and have a quality of life out on pasture, not here in a corral, but being cows, and us being able to be caretakers of the land who are just enjoying what we do.
Stewardship of this farm means that it's green. Back a few years ago, I couldn't hardly grow anything because I didn't understand the soil, the conservation that takes to run this property. But now I understand that, and we can fulfill our responsibility of the land and the animals, that everything is in harmony with each other. Everything should be like nature, in harmony, and if you go against nature, then you're doing something wrong.